All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to talk about the redistricting stuff this morning because it just passed the Texas legislature yesterday. Texas has officially uh, approved the new congressional map, and of course, the lefties are just losing their minds about it. Texas House approves this story from AP News. Approves redrawn maps sought by Trump ahead of 2026 elections. That's interesting framing there. Sought by Trump. Well, it's not a totally unfair framing, but I mean, let's be real. If any other president had called a state and asked them to do it, they'd have just rolled with it. They don't care. So the Texas House on Wednesday approved redrawn congressional maps that would give Republicans a bigger edge in 2026, muscling through a partisan gerrymander that launched weeks of protest by Democrats and a widening national battle over redistricting. This language right here, muscling through a partisan gerrymander. Okay, let's talk about that. So we did not really a deep dive, but a bit of a focused show the other day on what gerrymandering is. And actually, Cameron and I were arguing about this the other day. He argued that it's not possible to have a districting system or gerrymandering system that doesn't include some level of corruption. And I disagreed. And he kept saying that we should use the word gerrymandering and the word redistricting or districting interchangeably. And he made one good point that without districting, actually defining what the districts are is an absolute necessity to maintain a representative republic, right? You can't have a republic of our style without congressional districts because the law explicitly dictates that we have a certain number of representatives in the House of Representatives. The number of representatives is based on the population, and the apportionment of those representatives to the individual states is based on the census of those individual states. There is a lot to look at there. One, Larry asks, is this not on Rumble this morning? Well, Patrick and Ma Wilbanks and His Majesty and Jason, everybody else watching on Rumble, brother. So yeah, it's there. Just maybe you tried too early. I did start a few minutes late. I was having some trouble with some of the back end this morning, but live is hard mode. So we're here. So I made the point as Cameron and I were discussing this the other day, and this was almost a week ago, so not exactly fresh in my mind on it. But I made the point that the specific term gerrymandering refers to a specific practice within redistricting and districting, which is the corrupt intent, right? It is only gerrymandering when it is done with corrupt intent. And it's when intent is part of the crime, is an element of the crime, it's a very important element of the crime, right? For example, there's a big damn difference between being charged with negligent homicide because you were having a birthday party and your bouncy house blew over on top of the grill and one of the kids got lit on fire, right? Negligent homicide, right? Versus you walked into the courtroom and shot the judge in the face. That is first degree premeditated murder. Intent is important. Intent is incredibly important. I use the example of the bouncy house because it's something that actually happened to us. Little aside, little story time, real quick. No one was actually injured in this instance, but we had a bouncy house, great big old bouncy house out on the beach, company barbecue when I was with my Delta unit in Hawaii, and a bunch of kids playing in the bouncy house. Too many of them got up on one of the high levels of the bouncy tower part of it and knocked it over. And it just happened that the wind caught them as they came over. And none of the kids landed on the grill, but part of the bouncy house did. And it collapsed, and the kids were kind of trapped. And suddenly you had, a dozen operators pulling out SOG knives and just ripping and tearing a bouncy house apart, trying to release the involuntary captors there. And apparently Alex has a nice watch. Pitt Danny says this would be a great use for AI. State districts could be made up with no concern for party. I'm about to get to that, and I don't even think AI is necessarily the perfect solution, but it's a good one to be involved there. So with gerrymandering, what you're talking about is you're drawing districts that just do not make sense. The districts. Let me pull up a gerrymandered map, and we can really point to what we're talking about here. The original gerrymander was this one, and this is why it's called gerrymandering, right? The first map ever of a gerrymandered political district, right? They drew this district that just went around the outer border of the state, right? It doesn't make sense. Then you get gerrymandered districts like, this one is, see this district here that just, that's a district, that blue part right there. That's one district, right? And here you've got one district that just runs down, and it's just painfully obvious when you look at it that what they did in order to create an additional Democrat-only district here, they cut into an obviously mostly red district. So as we're seeing the criticism of the Texas district, understand that they're redistricting 5 districts. 2 of them are majority black, right? The major criticism from the left is, they're going to disenfranchise black voters. They redistricted because Texas went heavy for Trump, and but it doesn't have representation in the House that is reflective of the national opinion, or rather of the opinion of national politics and national partisanship of the Texas population. And so the idea was to more evenly distribute that vote. Now, as we're hearing the arguments from the left, there are things like this. Hakeem Jeffries, for example, says the racially gerrymandered Texas map is a clear violation of the 14th Amendment and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. This corrupt power grab by desperate Republican hacks will be fought in the legislature and in federal court until victory is won. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to get to Crockett in a minute, Aaron Olson. Hey, guys, check it out. We have a troll. We have a shitbird troll. You don't understand what you're talking about. Complete GOP shill, pathetic. Yeah, I'm sure you've been here for the whole 10 minutes so far and have actually heard anything I've said. But keep watching, Tavat. That's that sounds like the kind of a name that Mario would have a comment about. So Jeffries is doing that black academician thing where he just calls up a thing that he's heard about and assumes that it's related to and therefore necessarily supports his point. So the racially gerrymandered Texas map, okay, for starters, like I said, Texas is not a majority black state, and they've just generated 2 majority black districts. So you're a liar on the racially gerrymandered question there. Full stop. Right? In fact, there are more Mexican, like actual naturalized citizen Mexicans in Texas than there are blacks. And there's nothing about a majority Mexican district there. So you're right. You're completely out of left field there, Jeffries, on the idea that it's racially motivated. Then the idea that it's a violation of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment deals with the abolition of slavery, deals with equal representation under the law. You have equal representation. It's just that simple. It really is. And then the 1965 Voting Rights Act, I don't even know where to begin to criticize him on this, right? The best I can do, because he's obviously just saying, oh, well, there was a Voting Rights Act that all the Democrats voted against. Let's not forget. I'll remind you, Jeffries, that you're not a human being. Hakeem Jeffries is not a human. What do I base that on? I base that on this. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Members of the Communist Party or Communist Action or Communist Front organizations used in this subchapter, the phrase unlawful employment practice shall not be deemed to include any action or measure taken by any employer, labor organization, joint labor management committee, or employment agency with respect to an individual who is a member of the Communist Party or of the United States or of any other organization required to register as a Communist Action or Communist Front organization by final order of the Subversive Activities Control Board pursuant to the Subversive Activities Control Act of 1950. That's right. Communists aren't people. And I want to take that a step further. Notice that let me just remind you, right here it says Communist Front organization, right? Any other organization required to register as a Communist Action or Communist Front organization by final order of the Subversive Activities Control Board. Okay. Can you point to a Democrat currently that is not actively supporting specifically communist or socialist policies? I would argue that the law, that the Subversive Activities Act, requires that the Democrat Party be registered as a Communist Front organization. That is the law. Right? So under the law, Democrats aren't people. So he brings those up, and it's just the most obnoxious blaxploitation. He knows that he's speaking to people who aren't smart and who won't call him on his bullshit and who will assume, well, he mentioned a law. If he mentioned a law, then I'm sure the law does exactly what he thinks it does, right? We don't do that here. If we mention a law, we're going to bring it up and we're going to talk about what's actually in the law. I didn't just tell you that the Civil Rights Act says communists aren't people. I showed it to you. I broke it down and explained it to you. I've got a great short running on YouTube where I go through that in a little more detail. So there's districting, there's redistricting, and there's gerrymandering. Districting is necessary because each state gets a number of representatives based on apportionment, which is based on the census. Well, we have a problem there too, because the last census was so inaccurate as to only be explainable by corruption, right? We've talked about, I almost said Maslow's hierarchy. Hanlon's razor. We talk about Hanlon's razor often. Never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. But here's the thing. Just because we prefer not to assume malice when incompetence is a viable explanation does not mean that incompetence is always a viable explanation. It's like more often than not when you hear somebody recite the old saw, oh, correlation doesn't equal causation. Correlation may not equal causation. Correlation may not guarantee causation. But correlation absolutely offers a valid reason to investigate causation. But whenever you hear them repeat that old saw, what they think they mean is, two things being related guarantees that they are not causally related. And that is stupid. That's the kind of shit somebody like Tavat would believe, because they don't have the intellectual capacity to give it further investigation, further thought, and understand it. So, similarly with Hamlin's razor, if we say never attribute to malice that which could be explained by incompetence, that doesn't mean that every bad thing might just be, or that doesn't mean that every bad thing is the result of incompetence. That's why the intent element of the use of the word gerrymander is an important distinction. So when these guys start railing about, it's gerrymandered, it's corruptly the Republicans are stealing power, stealing representation. Oh, my representation. How about this? Oh, to those fleeing Texas Democrats that say that they are saving democracy in Texas and the United States relative to congressional redistricting, here are the facts. Massachusetts, 36% Republican, 0 seats. Connecticut, 42% Republican, 0 seats. Maine, 46 Republican, 0 seats. New Mexico, 46% Republican, 0 seats. New Hampshire, 48% Republican, 0 seats. Right? These two right here, 48%. 46%, 46%, 48%. Do you know what I see? Do you know what I see when I see 46, 48% Republican and 0 seats? I see that the Democrats have taken such strong hold through whatever corrupt practice they've engaged that Republicans have just given up on voting in those states. If you're looking at a state that has almost 50% Republican and 0 seats in the House, the problem you have is not that there aren't enough Republicans there. It's that they've been so demoralized that they're not showing up to elections. That's just heartbreaking to think of. And then, if you go down, California, 38% Republican, but only 20% Republican seats. Illinois, 44%. This is one of the biggest offenders, Illinois here. 44% Republican, but only 17% with 3 of 17 seats. And it just goes on. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 states where Republicans have been gerrymandered out of representation, not just out of power. Understand that. That's what's important here. They haven't just been gerrymandered out of power. They've been gerrymandered out of having representation for their constituents. This is especially important when you're talking about states like California, where you get outside of these blue cancer centers that they call the metropolitan areas, the cities, right? You get outside of San Francisco, right, Los Angeles, etc. You get out into the farmland, and it's 99% Republican, where all of the valuable work is being done. Oh, Los Angeles turns over lots and lots of money. They have a huge economy in Los Angeles. Yeah. In overpriced service industry that's there specifically to cater to people who produce valueless, just cheap shit entertainment that's overpriced they're basically the generation hub of bread and circus. But where people are actually making products that Americans need, where people are growing food, right? This was a big chunk of the debacle with the California wildfires. The large metropolitan areas will vote to have the water shifted away from the agricultural areas. And they're gerrymandered so hard that the Republicans that are out there growing your crops don't have any representation at the federal level to make policy that's good for your industries, your economics, and your You know what, Louis? I'll give you that one. You made me laugh enough to break my train of thought for a second. That is a solid troll. You know what? And this is especially fun since Louis watching on YouTube. He's one of those freeloading welfare queens over there. To celebrate Louis having the unmitigated temerity to make me laugh enough to break my train of thought, I'm going to give away a free membership to some random lucky viewer on Rumble. That's right, Louis. Fuck you. You can't get it because you're a freeloading shill shitburger still watching on CensorTube. Get your asses over to Rumble, and you can be gifted a random... This is funny. This is even funnier. Okay, guys. I have no control over who gets the free membership. It just randomly went to my wife. The house wins, baby. That's right, the house wins. Jeff Brommer just called me a Muppet. Let's be clear, Jeff. If you want me to give away free shit to the rest of my audience, who, by the way, does not include you because you're on YouTube, right? Get your ass over to Rumble if you want to get a free month of Rumble Prime premium access. But if you want to get me to spend my money and give away free memberships, you're going to have to do better than Muppet. Right? Of course I look like a Muppet. I am Sweetums. Shit, son. So, since I've got some nutbird shitheads out here who are calling me a racist, let's play that game. Let's play that game. Here's Jasmine Crockett. Call me a racist.
Texas. So all of the races feel away when you call them exactly what they are. When you say, oh, you guys are racist and you guys are trying to implement racist practices with these racist maps, right? So
racist maps. Let me remind you, 2 of these new Texas districts are majority black. Nationally, black is still 17%. Texas just redistricted 2 majority black districts.
So, people getting their feelings, oh, how dare you? It's like, bro, I get that you took your hood off, but your hood is still there. Like, we see it. We know what we see, okay?
And speaking of racist, you hear this affectation she uses, right?
Texas.
That's the end of that video. You hear this ghetto black affectation she uses. That is not her natural voice. That is something she puts on.
Big ups to my...
That's something she puts on because she's a racist. She believes that black people prefer to interact with people who speak at a lower level, right? This is a highly educated professional race hustler who, this, she's basically Hillary Clinton with the bottle of, I keep a bottle of hot sauce in my pocketbook. Do you? I ain't feels no way tired. Oh, is that how you speak, you shill?
Big ups to my colleagues in California that got this together, did not fight about lines whatsoever. Big ups to their state assembly, as well as their state senate, as well as obviously their governor for stepping up to the plate and saying, Texas may want to play, but guess what? California can play too.
Oh, really? So, okay, so it's good when Texas does it. Or I'm sorry, it's bad when Texas does it, but it's good when California does it. And California is talking about redistricting. Oh, look. California already has a fifth is all they've got, right? 80%. 80%. So, for California to say that they're going to redistrict, that's why they're freaking out about this so bad. That's why they're so concerned about the gerrymandering that's happening. Because this is an area where there's just not much more for them to squeeze out. The Democrats have already gerrymandered all of their states so heavily that there's very, very little juice for them left for them to squeeze out. And so I think this is a great tactic, a great place to do some work, because the enemy has gone so far to corrupt the elections process that they have actually gone on to they have also gone so far on to corrupt the census process, right? Counting hostile foreign invaders in the census in order to bump up their numbers. And we've seen the reporting from the 2020 census, right? There were half a dozen Democrat states that were heavily overcounted, and there were half a dozen Republican states that were heavily undercounted, dramatically diluting the actual representation in our representative republic. So this is a full win, and my only complaint that remains is that the criminals, that would be the Democrats who fled the state in order to break quorum and delay the vote. Just like Jamal Bowman, they will not suffer any legitimate legal repercussions, consequences, or criminal penalties for the crime of interfering with an official proceeding, because they have that Democrat narrative plot armor, right? You throw on a Black Lives Matter t-shirt and you have plus 20 plot armor for all interactions with local police, in certain places. Because don't ever get confused. Reverse racism is still racism. When somebody refers to black people being racist against white people as reverse racism, they're excusing it because they are for it, because they support it. Oh, Wave Slayer, you're gonna have to be my last troll comment today. This is adorable. You are correct that we are enemies. You're right, Wave Slayer. You're if you have identified me through the conversation that we're having this morning as being your enemy, then let me be very clear. The oath was to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I mean, the answer's in the question. The oath was to uphold and defend the Constitution not the people, not the country, not the property, not the territory, not the government, not any one or any group of politicians. The Constitution. The Constitution. So if you find from the conversation that I've offered this morning that you believe that I am your enemy, the law commands that you belong at the end of an American serviceman's rifle. It's that simple. So, all right, guys, that's all I've got for this morning. My half hour's up. Good numbers this morning. And hey, I do love to get some trolls because, you know what? I love trolls because they hate me. And that makes them leave comments. They're not going to share this video. They're probably not going to subscribe. Wave Slayer says, I'm a veteran and hearing a slime ball like you invoke the Constitution is sickening. Oh God. Okay, let's play. Let's play, Wave Slayer. What was your MOS? Because I'm betting 92 series or 42 series. I'd be flabbergasted if you had a military job. You were support staff. You were admin or supply or something like that. I mean, come at me, bro. I mean, did you stack bodies? Kristen Johnson, I have a union job. Okay, that's all I need to know about you. You're basically a mob puppet. Governor Newsom will save democracy. You remember he suspended your state constitution for chuckles, right? And exempted himself from that suspension. Oh, let's see if I can pull up that map. A Hilo crew chief. Well, good for you. So, not a boots on the ground guy. Gotcha. So you didn't do a lot of combat patrols there. So, Babe, that's an article. Oh yeah, there you go. Well, anyway, like I said, that's the end of my time. So I'm going to go ahead and put a button on this one. Oh, wait. Who was that? Do these guys, Patrick Brown, do these guys realize they're feeding the algorithm in your favor? I guess, I don't know. I guess not. But, hey, all you haters out there, you bums, you Democrats that wanted to come in and troll this morning, I appreciate it. Grow these numbers, grow the channel. Help me talk to more red-blooded Americans who will, likewise adhere to their oath and help defend the Constitution against people like you, the enemies of the United States of America. Right? Veterans who vote for Democrats sicken me almost as much as fat cops. It really is that simple. Y'all be safe out there. We love you. And don't forget, commies aren't people.